So far over the semester, we focused on the idea that gender is socially constructed. Moreover, it's constructed in a way that results in a gender binary that assumes that men and women are fundamentally different from one another in every way. Of course, the gender system we construct doesn't assume that the different genders are equal to one another. Instead, the separation of categories happens vertically, resulting in a system of stratification that sets men up as the standard against which women and other genders are compared. Moreover, this gender binary and the gender system we've created shapes the way we think about gender, about the world, about ourselves, and about each other. As sociologist Patricia Hill-Collins demonstrates in her groundbreaking book, Black Feminist Thought, intersecting oppressions of race, class, gender, and sexuality could not continue without powerful ideological justifications for their existence. As an integral part of the ideology of domination, stereotypical images of marginalized groups are created by those in positions of privilege and power. These images are then used to justify the system of domination and inequality. As we saw with doctors and scientists defining what is normal and abnormal, the authority to define societal values is a major instrument of power, which means that elite groups are in a position to manipulate and perpetuate societal ideas about the oppressed. To do this, the powerful create, manipulate, and exploit symbols, images, and stereotypes of the oppressed. Collins calls these controlling images, and she tells us that controlling images are designed to make racism, sexism, poverty, and other forms of social injustice appear to be natural, normal, and inevitable parts of everyday life. These controlling images result in the objectification of oppressed groups, of women, of people of color, of the poor and the queer. What objectification means is that the marginalized are viewed as an object to be manipulated and controlled. Notice that this is very different from the term objectivation, which we learned about in the cycle of phenomenology, so make sure you don't confuse the two terms. Social theorist Donna Richards explains that objectification is a process involving the separation of the subject, or what she calls the knowing self, from the known object, an object known, observed, dissected, and evaluated by those in positions of power and privilege. Black feminist Bell Hooks further explains that as subjects, people have the right to define their own reality, to establish their own identities, to name their own history. What she's getting at here is the idea of agency. Subjects are their own agents. She then continues saying that as objects, one's reality is defined by others, one's identity created by others, one's history named only in ways that define one's relationship to those who are subject. So, to be an object is to be objectified and to be treated as less than human, to be dehumanized. To put this in the language of the sociological imagination, to be subject is to be empowered, to exercise one's own agency and self-determination, while to be object is to be denied this agency and thus victim to the determination of the larger social structure and those in power. Ultimately, this means that domination always involves attempts to objectify subordinate groups. Now, a powerful means for constructing and reinforcing these controlling and objectifying images is through how they are portrayed. The way that gender, sexuality, race, and class, and so on are portrayed gives us a presumably objective view of what they are, setting a standard for us to follow and internalize. And in our culture, we have an entire industry that focuses exclusively on controlling images and objectification, and that's the media. That means that the media, whether it's advertising, the news, television shows and movies, social media, and so on, has tremendous influence on producing these powerful ideological justifications for our gender, sexuality, race, and class systems of stratification. Controlling images both construct and reinforce our cultural definitions of social categories and the meanings they have for us. To wrap this up, and returning to the point made by Patricia Hill Collins, systems of stratification and oppression require powerful ideological justifications to support them and make them appear to be legitimate. The use of controlling images on the part of the privileged allows them to objectify those they marginalize, to dehumanize them, and ultimately to place and keep them at the bottom of the social hierarchy. And in our contemporary society, one of the main social spaces in which these controlling images operates is within the media of all different types.